But let's talk about parents. Parents, including Christian parents, no longer raise their children anymore. Rather, culture does, mostly through the internet. As a nation, we've submitted our minds to electronic devices that now shape our thinking and provide endless entertainment. In 2004, Pew Research poll showed that 60% of Americans were opposed to same-sex marriage. Now, today, those numbers have flipped, with only 40% of Americans being opposed. Why the change? Well, something was introduced in 2004, the iPhone, and that's not all. Social media apps Facebook and Twitter were rolled out. Google bought YouTube and launched their Android operating system. Why, I don't know. Amazon released their Kindle e-reader. And there were now more than 1 billion people accessing the internet. Thus, technology facilitated cultural change more quickly than any of us could have ever imagined. Now the cell phone in a teenager's hand is doing more to shape their worldview than an hour of Sunday school or through the guidance of their parents. In a big way, we failed to pass our faith on to the next generation. They're captives to the culture, social media, their peers, and as we've seen lately, the indoctrination by the public schools. Parents clothe their children, feed them, send them to school, but the hearts of many kids are being stolen and molded by a world that many of us don't understand. But not everyone. Parents are bewildered when their children come home from school saying they believe they're not the gender they were assigned at birth. And according to today's culture, you are whatever you feel you are. Some children go by a different gender at school than they do at home. And if you think this isn't happening in Christian families, well, you're living in a bubble that is becoming increasingly smaller every single day. More and more children are coming home and telling their parents that they're gay or they're transgender. Perhaps nowhere do we see the work of Satan in America as clearly as we do as in the sexualization of our children. It's destroying their identity, confusing their gender, and creating unresolved guilt and self-hatred. Jesus said, "Whoever receives one such child in my name receives me. But whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a great millstone fastened around his neck and to be drowned in the depth of the sea." That's Matthew 18, 5 and 6. This chapter, perhaps more than any other in this book, touches the heart of Jesus. As for Nazi Germany, Hitler said, "He alone who owns the youth gains the future." We're seeing that. And through laws and coercion, the education of America's youth is being taken out of the hands of parents and placed in the hands of secular educators, but not everyone. Using education to change the worldview of children has always been the goal of cultural Marxism. Among the measures the American Soviet government would adopt to further the Cultural Revolution are the following. The schools, colleges, universities would be coordinated and grouped under, listen to this, the National Department of Education. Remember that term. The studies would be revolutionized, being cleansed of religious, patriotic, and other features of the bourgeois ideology. Note carefully, the National Department of Education, not the parents, would set the agenda and determine what's being taught. The goal? To cleanse our schools of religious and patriotic influence. And the best way to do that is through sex education classes. The sensitive issue of sexuality and gender can be the gateway to all the other equality issues of all who reside in the state. Is this sounding familiar to you yet? And it will all be sold under the banner of a noble cause. Without the consent of parents, the comprehensive sexuality education curriculum is already introduced and in many schools. The curriculum was created by Planned Parenthood and Sexual Information and Education Council of the United States. Have you even heard of this group? This is why you hear me say, get involved in your local school board. We've got a job to do. Finally, in Martin Luther's day, schools were under the control of the Christian culture. But even back then, Luther feared for the children. He said this, "I am much afraid that the universities will prove to be the great gates of hell unless they diligently labor in explaining the Holy Scriptures and engraving them in the hearts of the youth. So now, as we get into today's program, ladies and gentlemen, this does not have to be the answer in your family. You don't have to take what the world says is the way it has to be. You don't have to buy into this ideology. That is the way the world is going. And so many times we need to just open our eyes to see what's really happening in front of us.